All right, recording has started, and this is the Thursday, November 16th Crossplane community meeting. As always, I will go ahead and drop a link into the Zoom chat for everyone to directly access the agenda document. And feel free to add yourself to the attendees list and also add any topics that you want to cover or discuss further on in the agenda as well. We'll merge all of them in there and we'll go through everything we can today. All right. So let's start with recent releases. So just yesterday, maybe 2 days ago by now, actually, we have already released a patch release for the 1.14 branch. There were a couple of scoped issues in here related to the this core functions machinery and then also the CLI experience as well for building and pushing functions. So we have got those out and available for folks. And then there was a couple issues that came up on deployment runtime config that I was curious if we needed a more to deal with in backport as well. But I will follow up after this meeting with the Crossplane maintainers to figure that out. Awesome. And then also there is Upbound's distribution of Crossplane has a release based on 1.14.1 patch as well. All right. So we are quite early in our 1.15 milestone here and the cadence for that. As a reminder, the release should be at the end of January is what we're planning for our typical quarterly releases. There has been almost no progress so far since we just shipped. I think literally on the last community meeting we just shipped, and then we all went to KubeCon, or most of us went to KubeCon for a week. So I don't think there's really been any progress at all to report on for the 1.15 milestone. So I think I'll just briefly touch on two high-level themes there that we expect to get significant progress still. And that is the environment configs maturing to beta and continuing to move those along, and developer experience investments as well. Those are the first two things that are at the top of the list there that we'll be investing in. So definitely expect upcoming progress on that, but I don't think there's too much to talk about yet, though.
Yeah, so Jared,
Sean?
just on environment configs, I know Philippe is working on a design proposal for that. He is probably going to be able to get it out in the next week or so, and it would be good to get folks' feedback on it. Then there isn't a PR up for it yet, but I know he's close to being able to push something out there. So folks should look out for that and engage on it as soon as it comes up.
Yep, that's a good point. And also kind of a bit of a reminder too that environment configs have been super adopted across the ecosystem. So the consideration into how to mature it and how to get the design to where it's going to be a good fit for the vast amount of use cases out there is going to be a bit of a challenge, but we are up to the task, and Philippe is leading that charge there. All right, so next time I think we'll talk more about deeper roadmap stuff. There's just not a lot going on yet with KubeCon taking away a massive amount of focus for us. So then let's hop into big news then for today that I think is fresh today. So Jean, I will let you take that, or someone on your team for Friday.
Yeah, I'll do the talking, but I'm pretty much just the PR spokesperson for the team. And I actually I asked them all to be on the call today because normally this is already 9 p.m. for them in the evening, so they normally don't join this call. But I wanted to give a big shout out to Alper, to Sergen, to Jem, to Erhan, Piotr, and Fatih, who's not on the call, but these folks have been working tirelessly the last few months on making some major improvements to Object in terms of the way that it works to really kind of like get over what we knew for a while is just some performance bottlenecks there. And today I'm happy to announce that provider AWS 0440 is out, and it includes the architecture changes in update 1.0. I'll let folks can go and read about the kind of like the nitty gritty of it and the performance improvements. Essentially, what you can expect is resources to be provisioned and reconciled much quicker, and it to use much less memory and CPU. We're actually busy kind of like doing some benchmarks, running a provider AWS on a T3 instance, and seeing how far we can push that. And so ultimately it will also save a lot of people costs, not having to run larger nodes for these providers. I'm not going to get too much into technical detail. Maybe if we have some time towards the end of the call, I might throw Alper under the bus and say he can give us a little bit of a technical overview of some of the challenges the team faced and what they needed to overcome. But for now, I'll give a kind of like a high level overview. Essentially, in the previous architecture, the way it worked was, we would make calls to Terraform CLI. And it would make calls to the Terraform provider, and there was multiple forking. We would fork many Terraform CLI processes. It would then go and fork multiple Terraform provider processes, and that's just a lot of memory and a lot of CPU overhead going there. What we're doing in the new architecture is directly kind of like speaking to the Terraform SDK of the Terraform provider, and essentially we had to go and do a lot of the things that Terraform CLI would just take care of us for us. So there was a lot of work and a lot of kind of like we got validation on this architecture like almost 2 months ago, but in typical fashion, like we got there in 80% of the time, but the last 20% of the work took more than that first 80%. So, but we're happy with where we're at. We've got quite a bit of things that we want to do. Next up, we want to invest in updating the documentation for Upject. We know there are other community providers that are using Upject already, and we want to make sure that they have the information they need and the know-how of how to upgrade their own providers to use the new architecture. We also have a 1.1 already planned for December, where we want to. So right now, it doesn't yet integrate with the Terraform plugin framework. There's only 5 resources in the current provider AWS that uses the Terraform plugin framework, and they're still kind of like reconciled using the CLI. But we have plans to eliminate that as well. And we've already started working on upgrading the provider Azure and GCP to the new architecture, and hope to get them out in early December. And then I alluded to this kind of like 2 weeks ago of kind of like we're planning major version changes coming to the providers, and we're close to finalizing kind of like a policy that we want to put forward for how Upject-based providers should version and manage upgrades, specifically with major versions. So there's right now the provider AWS is still based on Terraform's AWS provider version 4, and there's a version 5 out, and that version kind of like has a lot of breaking changes, and we're kind of like working on how we can minimize the impact of those breaking changes to end users to make the journey as smooth as possible. So a lot of work still kind of like lies ahead of us, but we're happy to have achieved this kind of like initial milestone, and would love it if folks can try the new AWS provider, give us feedback. We have done a lot of validation and testing of resources, but it's impossible to test every single resource in every specific scenario, and so we expect there to be the cases that we didn't catch and things we'd need to do, and we'll be responsive to folks who report those to us. So Yeah, that's a little bit of the update there.
Awesome, Jean. Thanks for sharing that. And then I had a question as we were going through that. Jean, do you already have information about the other big cloud providers and like timelines for those GA updates for them on this performance benefits?
As any good engineering manager, I will refuse to give you an exact date. I will say early December.
Oh, okay, that's what it was. Okay, got it. Nice. Cool. Right, awesome. And then the release notes here as well have some of this. Are these the same stats, or is there further details about like comparisons to previous and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I'm busy working on a blog post that should come out
Oh,
shortly
sweet.
that will have some comparisons. But essentially, it's significantly improved over 0.43. So folks should immediately see that. I will call out, take note in the release notes that if you previously made changes to your controller config settings, many of those settings aren't used anymore. And I highly recommend you just start with the defaults. We are going to publish a sizing and tweaking guide for which options you have right now and how you can tweak things if you need to make changes. But it should be plenty fast for everybody, pretty much.
And John, there's a question in the chat too from Carlos about this architectural change here is the final thing to get rid of any problems with HashiCorp licensing changes. Is that correct?
So technically, no. When we release update 1.1, that will be the final goodbye to Terraform CLI. Now we've locked it down so that you cannot actually use. Well, we can't use Terraform. That a version of Terraform that includes the BSL license. But like I said, there's right now in V4, there's 5 resources that uses the Terraform plugin framework, and we still need the Terraform CLI to reconcile those. But in V5, that jumps up to 30, and I have a suspicion that their new resources will be using that framework, and so we know we need to eliminate that last path there. And so 1.1 should come out in a few weeks, and that will be the final nail in the Terraform CLI, and then we will only be dealing with MPL licensed.
Nice. And then Blake had a question also about the design doc for this architecture. Is that available as well?
Yeah, we don't have one to share. I like I said, if we have some time at the end, I'm more than happy to let Alper loose on some of the technical details. He can share code and all of those things if he's comfortable to do that.
Cool. All right. Then let's go ahead and keep on moving through the agenda then. All right, but thank you very much for that update though, Jean, and like super congrats to the team working on all that performance updates and architectural changes to facilitate that. It's been really cool to see the direct feedback from folks that have already installed it and the performance gains that they're getting in their environments. That's been really encouraging to see the positive feedback there also. All right. So let's jump into the community topics. So there's a bit of good content here for recent blog posts and things. A couple of them are in German for some of you folks that speak, read, and write German. These might be of more value to you than they were to me, but they seem like good resources. Let me know if there's anything that comes out of those that we should follow up on. And then we also Piotr has made an interesting interactive experience for starting to get more familiar with composition functions that we'll focus on later on in the agenda. He'll take the reins and dive through that too. So let's talk about quickly the past of Carlos asked this in chat also. So I just wanted to hear from folks that were able to make it to KubeCon Chicago for how were things for you? Any like takeaways or thoughts or things to share about our experiences in Chicago?
I can start of some of the insights, or somebody else can go. I don't mind.
Go ahead, Carlos. Let's get us kicked off.
Yeah, so at least in the AWS booth, we have a lot of end users going through, asking about Crossplane more than the previous KubeCon. So that's an insight. Top question was the HashiCorp. That's why I asked, like, which is the version of at least for AWS provider that doesn't have any issues with HashiCorp license. So that's why I was asking, like, an issue to track. I couldn't answer like definitely, but I said, like, the community is working on it, and Object is part of the open source community.
Carlos, I just want to stand still on that one quickly. The current providers have no issues with the license. We're using the last commit from Terraform that pre the BSL license introduction, and so nobody using provider AWS, the outbound one, has any license concerns to worry about. And we made it so that we can't use a different. We fork Terraform and we only use the non-BSL version yet. But like the moment that will completely be removed is pretty much the next version of provider AWS, more or less, that will come out.
Yeah, and I understand you completely. It's just the end users don't know the details, the devil's in the details. Yeah. So they hear like something, and then like it will be completely removed in the future, right? That's why they hear. Yeah. So like, and they ask like, when in the future? So that's all. The other good thing was functions were asking. I got a lot of questions about functions of like, which languages, which is the supported language, is it Go better than Python to write the functions, right? I'm just giving like feedback of what people were asking, right? And then how difficult is to write functions, and such. So there was functions. There were functions questions around that, and also like people told me about conditionals, like the problems they had with conditionals, that they wanted like number of resources to be conditional. So my answer was like functions. So that's why the functions. And I think that's overall the questions I got was HashiCorp, functions, and then others can comment about like I want to hear like what were the conversations in the kiosk. I didn't work on the kiosk because I think it's only committers or maintainers of the project. So I would like to hear.
Oh, Carlos, you are more than welcome to come and hang out at the kiosk in any next KubeCon as well. Like any community folks are more than welcome to be there and have chats and all that stuff too. So you're welcome.
Okay.
To come.
Yeah, let's do a spreadsheet or something. I can sign up for a time slot.
Sweet. Yeah. Oh, right on, man. That's rad. But yeah, so maybe I could take that one too there, where there was a lot of maybe, I don't know, maybe more than in the past, but a lot of people were asking about how can they import or migrate their existing infrastructure into Crossplane. So they have existing stuff. How can they, get that going into Crossplane and start having it manage it instead? And what's the path there? So that was a popular thing to hear about. Definitely, yeah. Like functions were all over the place for sure. Like lots of positive feedback about functions, but then also questions about how to get started, like kind of similar to what you heard, Carlos, I think. And the what path to take there, but a lot of excitement around the doors that are now opened by functions and the kind of very flexible approach that you have for things now. So that's going to be super useful to continue to have a very broad way about going about things, but we'll still need to make investments in guidance and documentation and examples and everything, so people don't get overwhelmed with all that they can do and are able to focus on like the specific thing to do as well. And then the other thing I heard about also too is more general questions around like a multi-tenancy architecture. That continues to be a popular thing of, hey, I've got multiple teams. Sorry for dog. Anyways, for like how they could set up a control plane for handling multiple teams in their org and stuff like that.
Yeah, my main takeaway is pretty similar, Jared. So I talked about our usage of Crossplane. We're a pretty small company, about 400 engineers, and a lot of people came to me to better understand how we designed the solution. And so it was around multi-tenancy, how we set up things. And I think also what's interesting is that those similarly staff organization, they saw the same problem that that I was seeing. It's you're building a platform, but you also have a problem to solve at the organizational level. How do you bring people onto your platform? So it's linked a bit with the migration path that you can have. And I feel this area is getting a lot of improvement. I don't know if you guys saw, but CNCF just released their white paper on platform engineering. And I feel it's going to help people better understand how to build with Crossplane, because I'm seeing that people really see the value in Crossplane as a framework to build your platform. But then there is still some unknown in how do you go about to do this.
Yeah, and I thought that was really useful, Clement, where, a big portion of the talk was about how you handle multi-tenancy, right? And some of the solutions you've come up with where it's there. So I found that to be particularly useful for like a practical approach of, hey, this is how we've solved this within our org, and people are definitely getting value out of that. Other thoughts from folks and your experiences in Chicago?
I mean, the only thought was the keynotes, right? And a lot of talks, the topic of, control planes, platform engineering, abstractions on top of Kubernetes, using Kubernetes controllers, was more prevalent in talks, but more in the keynote. There was a section about internal developer platforms, creating a better experience for developers, creating abstractions. So I think it's a theme that may go forward, but it needs help from the community, right? So at least from the Crossplane community, if there are end users and you're watching this recording, right, you're an end user and have a use case and using Crossplane, please reach out to the community here, dev advocates, the technical folks, and you can pair with them and tell your story, right? You don't have to write it yourself. You don't have to write the CFP. But the more stories you tell about using Crossplane, right, other people will learn how to use it properly and the experiences. So I think that's one at least one of the things with these conferences.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Like platform engineering and IDPs and all that stuff are more and more of a high level theme that people are getting behind.
And there's a platform engineering co-located event. So CFP is open until December 3rd. So yeah, submit all Crossplane talks there. also
good call. Yeah, very good call. Yeah, well, that's actually then related to the next agenda item here for the KubeCon Paris timeframe. The call for proposals is still open, just for less than 2 weeks. So next Sunday evening is the deadline for that.
Oh, there's two deadlines. That's why I wanted to mark out. There's 2 deadlines.
Yeah, so the main conference is this deadline, and then like co-located events or
December 3rd
deadline, Carlos. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool. Do you have a link to those,
yeah,
Carlos?
I'll put
that in the doc too. Yeah.
Put it in the doc. And people can submit to both. You can submit the talk to the main event and then color event, and then the CNCF. I'm a CNCF ambassador. We'll figure it out. And then if you're selected in KubeCon, not there, and then we'll figure it out. But submit to both.
Yeah, there's opportunities for all, right? Totally agree with that. And and just wanted to reiterate the offer here. If anybody has ideas or is writing a proposal that they want some feedback on, just reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to provide, read it, review it, and give any feedback or ideas that I have as well. So feel free to reach out. All right. So next item on the agenda here, I wanted to just raise some awareness of this one. There's not a specific proposal or solution or plan yet, but I definitely wanted to start socializing this early within the 1.15 timeframe here. So Crossplane itself is now installed from the Crossplane, the marketplace, xpackage.upbound.io. The tooling, like some of the Crossplane CLI tooling pushes, for instance, by default to that same registry as well. But this is not consistent across all of the Crossplane, like the lifecycle of Crossplane packages. So I'm proposing that we make that consistent and ubiquitous and just use xpackage.upbound.io as the default for the package manager in the 1.15 timeframe. So some of the things that are driving that are, one, getting rid of the inconsistency, but then also, Docker Hub, it doesn't have awareness of Crossplane packages, right? It has no experience around them. So it does make sense to standardize within the Crossplane community around, the only Crossplane aware registry in the ecosystem, and have that be the default experience that people get. Another thing that's honestly driving this a little bit as well is that the Docker Hub open source program, they've been included in that for a long time, but that is expiring or has expired, which means that we don't get the rate limiting, throttle removals and all that jazz. So I am not motivated to stay in Docker Hub as a default anymore myself personally. So those are a few things that are driving it. Now, note here that we obviously want to think through this of, what is the path here or potential impact to existing environments. We want to make sure that the change is well thought through, and, anything that comes up, it can be mitigated. This is an idea right now that I want to push forward, but I don't have a solution of, that I've thought through every scenario here, and this is how it's going to work. So this is in the idea phase right now. But I did want to start messaging this here so folks start getting aware of it as early as possible. And feedback obviously is welcome on this issue as well, so we can discuss things there. All right. So any feedback there? Go ahead and add that on the issue, and we'll talk. Pete, are you on the call today? Pete. I don't see Pete. Nope. All right. Then I will show off some of Pete's work then real quick. So it's been a long-standing issue where within the Crossplane docs, we don't have API docs specifically for the Crossplane core types. There are, API documentation available within the Crossplane aware registry of the marketplace. So that's really useful there, but there's not anything for core Crossplane types. So Pete, our wonderful docs engineer, has started an effort to add to the docs, essentially, this is a little small, core API documentation as well. So similar to the experience that you'd get in the Upbound marketplace for providers and their types, you can start to get an experience around all the core API types as well. So I think this will be super useful for people to understand better, explore the types, the fields, the required values, all that jazz. So I would make a call out here that this is a super early POC sort of effort from Pete on this one. And if you do have feedback on it, then you can add it to, so here's two links here. One is the preview site that you can click on. You can go explore and check it out and get a sense for the feel for the experience there. And then if you have feedback on it, you're more than welcome to add it to this issue, docs issue 440 as well. So you can get, kind of help shape the direction that it's going and make sure this ends up being useful for everybody in the community. So kudos to Pete for starting to build this functionality. I think it's definitely really going to be useful. All right. Piotr, if you are online and want to go ahead and show off your effort here around building an interactive intro.
Yeah, so if you can just click on it, I'll just give like a brief intro.
Okay.
So before I go, I want to kind of circle back to providers, it still blows my mind how fast those things are. What caught my eye is that we not only increased performance, but we didn't introduce breaking changes. So this is something amazing. It's so many things happen behind the scenes that the team invested the time in. So it's super awesome. So you will have to log in actually using GitHub or whatever you want. So just briefly what it is. Killer Coda is like an interactive testing and learning environment. It's essentially a Linux terminal in a browser integrated with like a learning experience. So what I did here is just, created a beginner level composition functions training with actual running Crossplane instance and all other elements here. So if you're new to composition functions, this is like a hands-on way of building a composition function in Go and actually running it in the last step. And because this environment is live, you can also go like off track and experiment and explore what's happening here. So here, what Jared is showing, we have few things are being installed on the environment. So we have Crossplane CLI. We are bumping a Go version to the required one. Also, I'm installing Comoplane to visualize what's happening in the cluster. So it's like a full-blown environment without you needing to install anything on your local machine. And if you want to scroll a little bit down and go to next step, we can kind of see, or start rather, this kind of consists of various steps that you can run and click and execute and interact with the tutorial and explore the environment. So it's has quite a few steps involving here, and at the end we are essentially building together a very simple Go composition function, kind of like it checks out various branches, and I'm explaining how to build it. So again, very hands-on, very interactive experience with various running programs. So you can kind of come here and learn, or you can show it to someone and guide your friend or colleague who is not familiar with composition functions, so they can do this also. I'm going to release more of those workshops if you guys like it. Those will be dedicated for specific functionalities of Crossplane, maybe Crossplane CLI itself, or introduction to compositions. I have quite a few of those scenarios already available in my profile if you want to check it out. So I would love feedback if you find this is useful, or maybe there are some typos or something is not clear. Please reach out. There's my GitHub handle and other contact info in the scenario. I'd love your feedback as well. So yeah, that's what I got. Thank you, Jared, for sharing the screen.
Yeah, that's awesome, Piotr. I think that's super, super cool to have that sort of interactive experience there, and kind of walking through things. I don't actually think I had used Killer Coda before, so it's kind of cool to be able to like click the instructions and then they're executed in an environment that has all the tools and everything, right? So you don't have to go through things locally and change your environment there, or make sure you have all the prereqs and all that sort of stuff. So super, super cool.
Exactly, and for those of you who are familiar with Katacoda, which is a precursor of this service, Katacoda was acquired by O'Reilly a while ago, and guys from Killer Shell just forked it quickly and created this service. So just a little bit of context, but yeah, I'm super happy to get anyone's feedback.
Cool, awesome, man. So let's see. So next thing on the list here is a reminder about tightening your depends on version matching criteria. Jean, was that from you? Did you add that one in?
Yeah, that's me,
Cool,
and that's just an anticipation of we are going to bump the provider versions to match the major version number of the Terraform version that it's using, and that will be coming when we do the upgrades to the new Terraform.
All right, cool. And let me navigate back to where we were in the agenda doc. All right, and then so Stephen, yes, we do have time for you to give a demo as well, my friend. So I'll go ahead and let you share.
All right, I'll share my screen here. And what we're going to talk about today is it's a function called conditional patch and transform. So this is a fork. One of the awesome things about composition functions is that we could like test things, you know, in a branch of functions. So in this case, I am forking the patch and transform function with the goal of testing this out among a bunch of users and then, you know, making a case to get this merged back into the upstream patch and transform. So what we do here is we use the common expression language, CEL, which is used within Kubernetes itself quite a bit. I've been playing with this for a lot of things, and we use this to have conditionals on the function patch and transform, right? So we not only do this for the function itself, but for every resource. So you can like conditionally render resources based on conditions. So the way it works here, and I have some examples here, and there's a CEL playground that we connect to if you've never played with CEL, but basically it's just like an evaluation language. So what I'm going to demo here is I have an example of it. We have two resources, a blue and a green, and we're going to conditionally render them. So I'll just go into the code just for a little bit in the composition, and I'll make the text a little bit bigger here. And so what you see here in the pipeline is what we're doing is we have a new, just a new API version. It's just conditional, just so we don't have a conflict if you're running both on the same cluster. And it's the exact same as the existing patch and transform, except at the top level, we have a condition, right? And this is a CEL expression. And then what I have is I have resources, and I have on each resource, we've added a condition too, right? So whether this resource executes or not. So what we say here is we're going to say is blue enabled, like we have we're going to have an XR that says deployment blue equals true, and we're going to have the same thing for the green resource, right? So for each individual resource, and I have an XR here that kind of where you could set these. So I have it at the top level, whether the whole thing renders, and then whether the blue or the green. So that's what we're going to play with today. So what I'm going to do here is I have, I'm using another 114 feature here. I'm using trace, where I'm just watching the resources here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, we're just going to like say, enable the blue, you know, think about you have two node groups or something like that, and you want to bring one up for maintenance while the other, so we can enable blue here. Then if I apply this, it's going to start creating it, and you're going to see here, and then we'll have the resource. It takes a few seconds because I'm using just a dummy resource here. And it'll get ready, and I could do the same thing with the green resource. You know, I can just bring it up, apply, if my up arrow works there, and you'll see the same thing, right? So that's basically the idea. We're matching conditions as soon as you can have any kind of thing with the CEL environment. Basically anything that's in the either observed or desired state can be used as a key. And there's lots of things there's lots of conditions you can test. There's things like, is the status set to something? Is the length of desired resources? You know, there's all kinds of tests that you can have, but that's basically the idea. So I will
Stephen, can you show the composition again real quick before you stop sharing your screen? I just wanted to see, like, get a little bit more familiarity with what the syntax looks like.
So here, so here, this is the top level, right? So if you look at the XR, we could say, is it dev and is spec render equals true, right? So if we go back, so observe composite, this is what you start with. So the composite is the XR, right? So if we go to our XR here, you're going to see dev render. So if I hit false here, right, let's see what happens. Is it going to work? We're going to demo it. And we'll see if the composition stops rendering or not. Maybe we'll wait, maybe we're not, or it may just keep it. I haven't tested that yet. So yeah. So that's the first one. And then for each resource, there's also a condition. I thought about using like ifs, which they have like in GitHub Actions, but it seems like it's, I don't know, this feels just a tiny bit better.
Yeah, I think that was a really good step forward with this also, Stephen, to add conditions at the resource, the individual resource level as well, to make it more granular. That was really, really a good improvement here.
Yeah, and it's not an enormous amount of code. The whole function itself is, I have some CEL but the whole function itself is maybe a couple hundred lines. Oh, this is actually patch and transform, so there's a bunch in there, but this is actually the code it's here for each we go through each desired resource here, and we just evaluate the condition based on the request, right? So, and this is just calling a CEL. So this is basically the meat of the function for each resource.
That's super cool. So do the conditions compound from the top level condition, and the others, they have to be all true?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I just think the top level has to be true. I don't know what's going on here. It shouldn't be rendering, but I'll have to go debug that, see what's going on. Make sure I save that. Yeah, it should be. They should be at the top level, and then at the resource level too. So, yeah.
So how are these functions being shared? Are we creating a standard library for Crossplane that people can leverage, and they don't have to write code or not write any functions? Are we collecting this in the standard library? Maybe version it?
I think for me, the main thing I have is that I'm thinking of putting it to the standard. The SDK is my CEL library, which kind of hooks up the data types for the run function request and response into CEL. But that's not a ton of code, but I'm not sure about the rest.
So to use that function that you have, I have to like clone the repo, compile it, create a container, create a function.
No, you could just install this function here. I have it. You just install it. I have it sure just under my org now, but I may move it to either Crossplane contrib or Upbound. So yeah, just install this function in your environment and call it.
It's it's a standard OCI package, and it can be hosted in the marketplace, in the just in the registry like this, or the idea is that it becomes this with people can publish their functions just like they publish their providers to the marketplace to increase discoverability of all the various capabilities out in, and people can reuse others as functions.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, I like the idea of having them under Crossplane contrib. So I understand it's a container image. I can run it like in my own container image registry. Like that's not a problem. It's like the discoverability of a small set of useful functions, right? That are like very reusable, right? And then the rest are like people creating their own functions and sharing it however they want. But yeah, putting them in Crossplane contrib might be a good idea.
I like the idea of the marketplace. Add a new type to the marketplace, and
type to discover.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful idea. I just wanted to capture what we were talking about in the chat of like, I think that this use case is really good for, let's say, the groups that don't want to use code, right? Having these kind of like open source, right? I throw my inputs in and I get something out. One of the things that I know I've struggled with writing compositions previously is I'd have like a 500-line YAML file with all my business logic in it. And being able to move that into code has been really helpful, not only in just making sure our understanding of what's going on, but also for doing things like testing, things like that. Like I don't have to set up an integration environment to make sure my business logic works, right? I can do that right within code, which has been really, really valuable. So I do just want to call out, like, there are use cases, and I think we want to accelerate those use cases of businesses putting their business logic into the code and using the Crossplane functions to be able to, do things like that.
Yeah. And one thing why my demo wasn't working before, because I hadn't applied my composition where I added the conditions to the composition. So I think I was like, I didn't understand why it wasn't working, but now, like, if I set the top level to false, it turns everything off, right? So you just stop rendering the whole thing. So
Sweet. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for figuring that out, Stephen, in the live demo there. And then Blake, super validating for what you're saying there too, man. I think that like functions is the start of being able to codify the structure of your platform and your resources within code, as opposed to just declaratively YAML if you want to go that route. And I think that there's more things we could do to take that even further, where you can like imagine a scenario where you're entirely using your language of choice to specify everything and not have, not touch any YAML at all, as you take it to the extreme there. So I think there's a lot of validity in what you're saying there for sure.
And I do think that one of the things I think would be really interesting to start getting some community, let's say open source ones are automating day 2 operations. So one of the things that is very consistent is like if an instance size changes on my database, for example, right? I don't want to take the entire database down. I want to be able to fail over in kind of a cluster format so I don't take down my writer, right? If I had a Crossplane function that did that sort of work, and I think this kind of goes into why we did pipelines with composition functions. I think if we can start showing the community how those sorts of things can be done, that would be really, really powerful and really interesting.
And Blake, have you already seen this proposal here for
I have
day 2 operations function? Yeah. Yep, that's on an investment on the roadmap as well. So you're at the vanguard of the thinking here, Blake. So I like where your mind is going, dude.
Although I wonder if it should just be done as maybe this is a separate discussion, is I wonder if this should just be done as part of the pipelining, right? And then in your Crossplane function, as part of your rendering, you're dynamically rendering based off of the observed state versus desired state, right? So if I see that there's been a change to my resource, then doing some custom day 2 operation to be able to do that, sort of work. So that's where I question whether or not we actually want a different type, or if we should just show how it could be done with our existing composition, function type.
Yep, and I think that'll definitely be something to think through in terms of the proposal when it gets kind of fleshed out a little bit, and kind of questioning like, hey, does this need to be done in a new experience, or is it kind of just a variation of the existing experience, or is it more of a informing people and giving them the right tools in the SDK and stuff? So yeah, like your feedback will be super useful there when we discuss it further. Like definitely. And then Carlos, yeah, you were talking about like a place to find discoverability, right? Like so what Stephen was showing off was something that he's been hacking on and working on, because he thinks it's a good idea. In general, like having the source code of useful functions be discoverable, being part of Crossplane contrib, like yep, that's totally accurate. Like what Stephen was showing was actually like kind of a fork of the existing patch and function patch and transform that does live in contrib right now already. It's just adding new functionality and showing it off early. So discoverability of the source code and being able to collaborate around them in a contrib repo makes sense. And then discoverability of them in the marketplace makes sense as well. And then, but that's exactly where you can find them to more from a consumer perspective.
This is great. Is that available?
Yeah. Yep. That's just marketplace.io, upon.io/functions right there.
And we need to tag them. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, let us know if you have any questions or feedback about that, Carlos. Happy to hear anything you got to say, dude. All right. So that's everything on the agenda. Definitely an exciting community meeting with multiple things being shown off. I want to continue encouraging that because I think it makes these community meetings more valuable, right? When we're showing off what we're working on and kind of getting excited and getting ideas going. I love the interactivity of these when we have things to show off. So if you ever want to show something or demo something or bring something up, just let me know. We'll get it on the agenda. We're super encouraging of folks, kind of getting a spotlight as well and collaborating together here. So if that's everything on the agenda, then I think we could wrap it up for the week. And we'll see each other in 2 weeks. Next week is Thanksgiving for US folks. So we don't have to miss any community meeting there. And we'll see everybody at the end of November then. All right. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate everybody showing off stuff today.